We want to finish this session by talking about our man code. And what do we mean by the concept of a man code? This is the second foundation stone of the No Man Left Behind model. And I want to begin by just asking you about the dress codes of your churches. Anybody in here tell me, what is the dress code of your church? Casual. Okay, casual. Anybody else have a dress code? It's just a range. How would you describe how people dress at your church? Nice casual, okay. Do we have any coats and ties still in the room anywhere? Okay, we have some coats and tie churches, awesome. Do we have any cut-off jeans and, okay, we got some of those in the room, good, all right. So we got a wide range here. The reality, though, is that all of our churches have some kind of dress code. We have some kind of range that most people fit within, whatever that range is, however wide it is. Most people kind of conform to that. And if I were to drive to your church and I looked around outside, I would probably not see a single billboard out there with dress code listed on it, a picture of a guy, and you can wear this and don't wear this, or whatever. So how do people figure out the dress code? They look around, right? They just look around and they figure out how to fit in, what is the expectation level here about how I should look. And they learn how to kind of fit within those parameters. And so, you do have churches that have all kinds of dress codes around the country. You have churches that would have a suit and a tie, guys who would have business casual, people that might be T-shirts and shorts. We had one church from Hawaii that talked about wearing thongs and T-shirts. We later found out that by thongs they meant flip-flops. We were glad to hear that because we didn't necessarily understand exactly how that worked. So, So when we talk about a man code, we're taking that idea of dress code and we're kind of applying it to the impression that your church gives about its men. What is the impression that your church gives about men? How would they fill in the sentence that men are blank here? If a man came to your church for 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks and he looked around on Sunday mornings, he's going to sort of get the atmosphere. He's going to soak it up. In the same way he sees your dress code, he's going to see your man code. And so is he going to figure out that men are kind of tolerated here? Or that men are ignored here? Or that men are valued here? That men are important? That men can actually make a contribution? These things are incredibly important as you establish the environment of your church because of the difficulty of overcoming that in the future, okay? Imagine this. Some of you guys that have a coat and tie church, what would it take to get every man in your church to show up in bathing suit and a tank top on Sunday morning? Not going to happen, is it? Right? Maybe if we could have global world peace and ending world hunger, we might be able to get them to do it for 1 week, right? But it's pretty much not going to happen. Because they know that this is the range of how they're supposed to dress as a man in the church. And you're never going to jump to some way other extreme, okay? So if you establish a man code, he comes the first few weeks and he hears about all the great things going on for the women and the kids things, and he sees a lot of guys just kind of sitting around, and he sees all these ladies working and all this exciting stuff going on in those ministries, and the guys are sitting in the back and just hanging out. Well, 6 months later, when somebody gets up there and says, all right, guys, we're going on this mission trip to Haiti, and there's not going to be any electricity, and we're going to be sleeping on a dirt floor, and it's going to be... He's looking around like, I don't know who he's talking to. I just bring my wife and my kids. I mean, that's what we do, It's going to be just as difficult to overcome that as it would be to get every man in a coat and tie church to show up in a bathing suit and a tank top. So your man code is either going to be holding you back because the impression that your church has given to men is that they're not really that important, they're not really that valuable, that they don't really have any responsibility, they can't really make an impact, nothing's really expected of them, right? If that's true, then your man code is going to be consistently holding you back from really having an impact in the lives of men. On the other hand, if you can create an environment that says, hey, man, you're valuable. We appreciate you. We respect you. We believe in you. And we expect things from you. Then that kind of a man code is going to constantly be sort of pushing those guys forward, pulling them forward. A guy that just shows up because his wife is making him every week, he's going to see another man doing something. He's going to hear a story. He's going to be watching all these guys. And he's going to feel a little uncomfortable. Oh, man, these guys are actually into this thing, right? And so you create this completely different experience for those men. A great example of this is a man in a church. And he came to a brief training that we had, and he caught on to this idea of the all-inclusive that we've already talked about, that every interaction that we have with any man in our church is ministry to men. And he wanted to create a man code in his church that would sort of turn it upside down from what it was before. And so he got together with his pastor, and he began on a weekly basis sending out an email. And all that email did was it highlighted something that a man in the church was already doing. A man that was working with the middle schoolers, that was coaching sports, that was doing a service project in the community, whatever it was. And every week he would do this, and once a month he would kind of put those together, print it out, and put it on the foyer, put it in the foyer at church. And he said after 3 or 4 months, all of these people came up to him and started saying, I cannot believe all the new ministry that our men are engaged in our church. It's fantastic. We never knew that our men could be this excited. Not a single thing that he talked about was new. Everything was already happening. But he realized that simply by communicating about it in a way that helped people put it together and understand this is something that God's doing through the men of our church, that he could create a new environment where people began to expect that God would do things through the men of their church. And so one of the things that we would want you to think about is, what are the factors that kind of create this man code in people's minds? And I'll run through these fairly quickly. They're also in the book, No Man Left Behind. But men, think about how a man looks at your church when he shows up for the first time. He's going to notice the leaders. He's going to look at them, and he's going to see what kind of people are they. Are they the kind of people that he would respect or that he would want to hang around? He's going to read the bulletin, probably, at least glance at it. In many churches, it wouldn't be hard to find an example where you might see 4 or 5 things for ladies and 8 or 10 things for women, for children, and then maybe a mention at the bottom of 1 thing for guys or something like that. Those are impressions that are being created in people's minds. The setting, the decor, is it lots of pastels and flowery wallpaper and, all this kind of thing, or is there any aspect of the church that seems masculine? Okay. The quality level of how things are done. Men don't mind if these are amateurs that are doing it, but they want to know that they at least worked hard at it, that it wasn't just thrown together and just hope that somehow it was going to work out. A vision. Guys want to believe that they're headed somewhere. They want to hear about results. They want to hear about purpose and why are we doing what we're doing. The humor is a great indicator for many men. This is that we don't have to take ourselves quite so seriously, that we recognize that life has many aspects to it. Your pastor. Men are going to look at your pastor. Most guys will, at least, if they don't come to the church because of the pastor, they're probably going to stay at the church because of the pastor. In other words, they probably at least tolerating, if not enjoying, what the pastor has to say on Sundays. And so men are going to look at your pastor. And all of that is going to go together to create a man code. Now, I want to share with you some of the man codes that we've heard from churches as they kind of thought and answered the question, if a man came to our church 3 or 4 times, what would his impression be about what we thought of men if he had to put that into a phrase? Okay? Share with you a couple of those that we've heard from churches. One is, you don't bother us, we won't bother you. That's one of the man codes that a group came up with, that's kind of the impression that they would be giving to men who came for 3 or 4 weeks. Another one is, if you're a successful man, then come to church here. We've got lots of room for successful men at this church. Another church said, if you have a wife and kids, bring them to church here. We'll take care of your wife and kids. We've got lots of good things for them. Another one said, if you think you're tired now, come to church here and we'll show you what tired really is. Some of you can identify with that. Somebody talked earlier about somebody talked about the church that works, right? So these are the kinds of descriptions. Of course, we've heard some really good ones and some other funny ones as well. But what I'd like you to think about is just what is that impression that your church is giving to guys who come? Maybe it's only 2 times, 4 times, whatever it is. How would you describe the impression that they're receiving about your church? And we're going to give you a chance as you work through your exercises to talk about this question even more.
In your workbook at the end of this session, you'll find some questions for discussion and application, including an opportunity for you to think of a phrase or a sentence that describes your man code. Then during the application time, take the man code audit form and begin to think about how your church looks through the eyes of men. This weekend when you come to church, bring that form with you. Look at your church through the eyes of a man that's only been there once or twice and add any other comments that you might have to your sheet. Then the next time you get together for the next session, take a few minutes at the beginning before you watch the video to go over your man code audit sheets and compare notes.